Hey everyone, it's psychic medium Josh Simons coming to folks today with my Monday message. I do this every week to lend a little bit of insight and wisdom that comes from my work with spirit to better the lives of people out there who would watch these videos. So today I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and it's really important to me that folks hear this. One of the things that I find, especially to whatever degree I find myself as a public figure, right? That I work with the public, I have a public persona. And when it comes to that, there's a certain level of, there's a certain level of strength or self-perceived strength that should go with that. I've been sitting with the idea of being vulnerable, right? That in this position, I see a lot of people. I'm very blessed. I am very blessed to do what I do, and yet I struggle, right? I struggle in my own daily life, and it's important for people to know that a fellow like me, I do have gifts, and I'm very grateful for those. I see those gifts as making me different, not separate or better, just different. There's a tendency to not want to show vulnerability, whether you're a public figure or not, right? Like, we don't want to show other people that we're weak or that we struggle. And I do struggle. Not all the time. I have a really wonderful life. But one of the things that I struggle with, and I know a lot of people out there watching this can relate, is my teenager. My son just turned 18, and Isaac, my husband, and I have had full custody of him since the 6th grade, the 5th or 6th grade. I think it was the 6th grade. And we've had him full time. So we've had him at least 6-7 years full time. The hardest part of parenting my child has been from the age of 15 to right now. Very difficult. Not easy. Not easy. The hardest part of raising him. One of that is watching him go out to the world, driving, working, doing those things, hoping against hope that he doesn't get too messed up by the world, or he messes himself up in the world. And lately, it's been really tough. Good, but tough. He just turned 18 a couple weeks ago, and it was incredibly hard on me. And I didn't realize it, right? There is a transition that when parents, lose their children to adulthood. I never realized how tough it was until I went through it myself. And we've been butting heads a lot. I will be the first one to admit that I have high expectations, right? I don't want him to do the bare minimum, because the people in life that do the bare minimum, they don't go very far. I wasn't raised like that. I don't want him to be like that. And yet it's been really tough. Really tough. And the other day, we got into a big fight. Big fight. As parents and kids ought to do sometimes. And it was a bigger fight. And I really struggled with it. It really hurt, right? Because we don't want to hurt our kids, right? Most of us, at least, don't want to hurt our kids. But this fight hurt him, it hurt me, and it was tough. And I was sitting with it. And then, as I was driving home the other day, I get into this trance mode, and I think a lot when I'm driving. The idea crossed my mind about biological imperatives, right? That there is, and I've never studied this, I don't know this, but there's got to be something to this. There's this idea that when a man becomes a certain age, what have you, that he's going to fight with his father. And it's almost like a biological imperative of this father to push his kid off into the world. And the sense that I get is very much like, take a bird, right? Or a crow, for instance, or a bear, right? Raised by its parents or its mother. And then it reaches a certain age where that mother or those parents are like, go, right? This relationship's done. You need to go and become your own parent, mother, father, what have you. And I think that we see this happen in a lot of the animal kingdom. And we are part of the animal kingdom. I take this moment here to talk about, one, biological imperatives, that we are humans, right? That we are biological creatures, and that we have these impulses, these compulsions, sex being one of them, right? Eating being another. There are these things that we must do to perpetuate our species, perpetuate our time here on the planet, right? But I take this moment to talk about how, in that moment of stress that I was having, in that moment of direness that I was having, because I don't like conflict, I don't want to fight with my kid, right? So everybody should just get along. That idea came to me in that moment of a biological imperative. And I sat with that, and when I got home, I sat with him, and I talked to him about that. And I said, I think what's going on here is you're getting to the point in life where, biologically speaking, you should be going out and doing your own thing. Now, biology happens for a reason, right? To keep things going, to keep things alive. And yet we're not just animals, right? We're not just animals that are subject to the whims of these compulsions or these impulses. And that's where a really, really fine grasp of science will help a person with their sense of spirituality. Because if I can understand animal impulses, biological imperatives, if I can understand that, that's going to help me better understand myself. But very interesting that I would have gotten that piece of information the moment that I needed it. And that is, to me, a way that I should explain to folks how spirit communication works. For me, at least, and I think for a lot of other people, they just don't realize it. That in those moments of stress and turmoil, if you have a solid relationship with your spirits, you're going to get the information that you need, because your loving spirits don't want you to know stress. They don't want you to know turmoil or pain or drama or trauma or any of that. So I use that story, one, to help people see that there are biological imperatives that affect us, that we are subject to, right? But that we should not be slave to. We shouldn't be slave to these. And I also use that example to show folks the idea that that's how spirits will communicate, right? When you think of something or you feel something out of nowhere, you might not be thinking or feeling, you might actually be hearing something. And again, this is something that happens to far more people than I think a lot of folks realize. There are biological imperatives to be aware of them, right? And this is the exact conversation that I had with my son. Having sex is a biological imperative. But just because it's a biological imperative, it doesn't mean you become slave to it. It doesn't mean that you just go out and have sex all the time willy-nilly. That's how you get STIs and STDs, and all sorts of awfulness will come from that. So understanding the biological imperatives of us as animals can only help us. And that's, goes to food, goes to drink, goes to, even TV, goes to our addiction to social media, the biological imperative to be accepted in a social group. I mean, there's a lot that goes on here. And it's not just the biological imperatives that we inherit from our ancestors, it's other things. This past week, I gave a reading to a woman, and her father was very much right there, right, in spirit. And I had to ask this woman, if her father was an electrician. And he was, because he kept talking to me in electrical terms, right? He was very proud of his daughter, who was also a mother, right? Very proud of his daughter, who was also a mother to his grandchildren. And he was proud of her because he described her as a conduit, or like a circuit, right? So consider, just because we have to do this with spatial stuff, right? Consider our ancestors to be up here, right? Consider our descendants to be below us. Well, right in the middle here is us. And we are this conduit between our ancestors and what they have to offer us and what our family has taught us to our descendants. And this father was very much happy in talking to his daughter, like, wow, you're a really great circuit because you are intentionally passing through our virtues, our ethics, our morals, our goodness to your descendants, to your kids, their grandkids. So the father had to illustrate that in a language that he knew, which was electrical stuff, and I really didn't know a lot of the terms that he was trying to pass through to me. We are subject to those biological imperatives, but we are also subject to the biological, genetic, cultural imperatives that are specific to our family. So if you come from a family of musicians, you're going to understand that you're going to have a little bit more inclination towards music, right? And that's the same with healing. It's also the same with alcohol. To understand that you come from people who like alcohol, that's going to help you understand your imperative or your inclination to also like it. This is really where knowledge is power, and this is why science is so important, especially when it comes to the spiritual. There's no difference really between the spiritual and the scientific. It's just a different lens through which we look at the same thing. Okay, so that's just something, you know, for folks to think about, right? I benefited from that experience and that wisdom that my spirits passed through to me. I can only imagine that other folks will benefit from this. But pay attention to not only those biological imperatives that are controlling you, right? Pay attention to the genetic and cultural imperatives that come through from your family. And also take time to sit with the idea of you as a conduit. If you have ancestors and family members that came before you and you honor them and they have virtues worth passing on, think of yourself as passing on that which has helped you and helped them to help your descendants. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be descendants, right? You don't have to have kids. Think about the community that you're with, right? We're not just a conduit to our family, we're a conduit to our community, right? Our world. That, yes, we have family members, parents, grandparents that have given us these amazing gifts. And even if we didn't have kids ourselves, we have the ability to pass those gifts on to the community of which we're a part. It's really important. I want to pull a tarot card really quickly, just a general information, a little bit of wisdom. And then I'm going to go clean out my mother's gardens because I'm recording this right now on Mother's Day afternoon, and every Mother's Day I go and I clean out my mom's gardens. So I'm going to go do that after I'm done with this, after I share this tarot card with you. Ha, okay. I love how tarot works. I love how runes work. I love how tarot works. I love how all of this works. So the card I pulled was the Ten of Pentacles. And if you're familiar with tarot, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So the Ten of Pentacles shows us like home, happiness, fulfillment. Yes, shows people, right? Ancestors, children, the elderly, the young, pets, and family. But interesting how these people right here, who I imagine would be the children of this person and the parents of this person, these people right here is that conduit. They're that conduit that I'm talking about, that connection point between our ancestors and our descendants, right? So tarot is just reinforcing that message. And when you're a strong conduit, so the idea of family, right? There's families that struggle and suffer. There's families that do well and, you know, know peace and all of that. That's what this one is, right? They know peace. They're not struggling. When you become a strong conduit, you increase this overall peace, right? That if you can actively bring the wisdom and insight and the values from your ancestors to your descendants, all of this gets better. This whole picture gets better, strengthened. So that's it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I hope folks out there get some insight out of this. And I hope that you had a wonderful Mother's Day. I'm about to go have a wonderful Mother's Day with my mom. So thank you again for tuning in. Be well. I'll see you next week.